Welcome to the One Year Book of Mormon. A non-Mormon reads through the Book of Mormon. 2 Nephi, chapter 12. Chapter overview. This is a near copy of Isaiah 2, but with some significant changes. This is the first of 13 chapters that Nephi quotes, laboriously scratching and engraving each one into metal plates, remember. This post covers one chapter because there are a lot of changes, but the other chapters, there are not so many changes, so I will be doing multiple chapters in one. Fortunately, the verse numbering system is the same in the Book of Mormon as in the Bible, so it's easy enough just to refer to the verses. Verse 2 is verse 2 in both Isaiah and the Book of Mormon. And that's where we'll start. Isaiah says, "It shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain," etc. But the Book of Mormon says, "when the mountain," etc., which actually turns the sentence into a fragment. In verse 5, Isaiah says, "O house of Jacob, come ye and let us walk in the light of the Lord." And that's the end of the verse. But the Book of Mormon continues with, "Yea, come, for ye have all gone astray, every one to his wicked ways." Very likely Joseph Smith got these additions from elsewhere in Isaiah. My guess is that the "yea, come" part is from Isaiah 55, 1 and 2, and the rest of it from Isaiah 53. Verse 6 inserts "O Lord" after "therefore," which is a minor change and not worth mentioning. I wouldn't have brought it up, except I'm going to be looking at this verse because there is a major change in the rest of it. Because it says, "And are soothsayers to, and hearken unto soothsayers." Since God was here saying in Isaiah that he had forsaken the Israelites because they had become too much like their wicked neighbors, specifically that they had become soothsayers like the Philistines, to saying that they merely listened to the soothsayers like the Philistines, that's a big change. Both are bad, of course, but I think that being a soothsayer is worse than merely listening to one, so the Book of Mormon here minimizes that sin. Verse 9 is interesting in that there are three versions. Isaiah's version, the 1830 version of the Book of Mormon, and the modern version of the Book of Mormon. The context of this verse is that the men are worshiping idols. In verse 8 it says, "Their land also is full of idols. They worship the work of their hands, that which their own fingers have made." Isaiah then continues, "And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself, therefore forgive them not." The great man would be someone who had some power or authority, or perhaps was a man of great wealth, while the mean man would be the opposite, maybe a lower class citizen, even a slave, a beggar, something like that. Not our modern usage of saying a mean man is someone who's acting cruel or angry in some way. He's mean and scary, not like that. So the great man and the mean man here is a merism, which is a common feature of the Bible, and we use this in English ourselves. For example, searching high and low, meaning we searched everywhere. In this case, the great man and the mean man, the high man, the low man, meaning everybody, all classes of people regardless of social status. So everybody here, by extension, would make idols and worship the work of their hands, these idols that they had made, bowing down to these idols and humbling themselves to these idols. This is what Isaiah is talking about. However, the changes in the Book of Mormon make it somewhat different, and it's different in both the 1830 and the modern version, so we'll have to look at those separately. First, the 1830 version, because it came first. It says, "And the mean man boweth down, and the great man humbleth himself not. Therefore forgive him not." I'm emphasizing these to denote the change because they are small words and easily overlooked. One might even think that changing them to him would even be a typo, a possible typo, and I would go along with that if it were only in the 1830 version, but the modern version includes it as well. So the Mormon can't claim, well, it really should be them, because it's in the modern version as well. So this minor change changes things in a major way, Instead of this passage referring to the near universal state of idolatry that the Israelites had sunk to, changing the great man humbles himself to the great man doesn't humble himself completely changes the context, making this passage not really make sense. It either must combine the mean man and the great man into one person, which makes no sense unless Joseph Smith didn't understand that mean and great were opposites and therefore couldn't be combined into one. And honestly, I don't think that would be the case, because they were much more apt in that day to use the term mean to mean a low man. So Joseph Smith would actually be more likely than the average man today to understand mean as being low or common or average. So it either must combine the mean man and low man into one and understand this single person either to be hypocritically bowing down physically without truly humbling himself, or it was breaking up the merism and so differentiating between these two men as if only one of them had committed an unforgivable sin. Now, this would have to mean that Joseph Smith would have misunderstood the context, as if saying that the mean man bowing down was a good thing, as if he bowed in humility, presumably to God, rather than bowing himself to an idol. And I could see, if you just saw that phrase and you didn't look at the context, that you could possibly say, oh, the low man is humble, he's low, he's a slave already, so of course he's low and he bows down. Of course, it doesn't make sense, the context, but maybe that's asking too much of Joseph Smith. Of course, the great man humbling himself, as Isaiah actually wrote it, would then appear to be a good thing, as in humbling himself before God. Therefore, Joseph Smith had to change this part, not realizing that the context was that the great man was humbling himself to an idol instead of to God. Moving on to the modern Book of Mormon, it keeps the changes of the 1830 version, but also inserts not after boweth down. So it makes it more consistent in a sense, in that it negates both acts of humility or worship, but it forces an odd meaning into the reading, such that these people are refusing to bow and humble themselves, presumably before God, rather than the original reading of Isaiah, in which they are bowing and humbling themselves before an idol and engaging in willful idolatry. So I guess we could consider that the mean man not bowing down and the great man not humbling himself could possibly be considered as that they would be refusing to worship God, and in that sense it would not be entirely unacceptable, but it just seems odd, especially considering that the way it appears in Isaiah does actually make sense. An additional problem for the modern version is that it retains forgive him not rather than forgive them not. So if both of these men are committing wicked acts, why would only one of them be said not to be forgiven? It either requires that these two men are to be considered as one, and I've already shown the problem with that, or that the great man not humbling himself is considered unforgivable, but the mean man not bowing himself is acceptable, and that really doesn't make sense. Moving on, verse 10 is also changed, and these same changes are made in verses 19 and 21 as well, but at least the two versions of the Book of Mormon stay the same. Isaiah 2:10 says, "Enter into the rock and hide thee in the dust, for fear of the Lord and for the glory of his majesty." The Book of Mormon version says, "O ye wicked ones, enter into the rock and hide thee in the dust, for the fear of the Lord and," for is omitted, "the glory of his majesty shall smite thee." Unpacking this a bit, adding "O ye wicked ones" isn't a huge change, I guess, but the other two changes are significant. Adding in "the" changes it from a warning to the people to hide themselves in view of the fear of God and the glory of his majesty, and changes it to a warning to hide because they'll be smitten by the fear of God? How can the fear of God smite someone? And smitten by the glory of God's majesty. At least this second one is a possibility, but the first one just doesn't make sense, like much in the Book of Mormon.